feel like a great example for me personally. Like I said, I used to work a lot with kids. I used to be camp director up at the Upper Perk Y. And they're, working with kids, there's definitely some troublemakers. I find working with kids a lot easier than working with adults sometimes, especially, everybody has their own parenting philosophy. And so I've definitely had to go into meetings to work, and the key word is working with parents. You're working with other people. And so what it really comes down to me is respect, transparency, and if need be, knowing when to walk away or de-escalate a situation. No matter what you're talking about, emotions are always going to be there. No matter how logical an argument you have, emotions are a part of the human experience. And so knowing when you need to walk away, or knowing when you need to step back and take a second to recollect, I find always really helps in a disagreement, because when it comes down to it, it's respect. I don't have to agree with everybody in this room, but as long as they respect my opinion, I'm going to respect theirs, and I'm going to take that into consideration.
Great, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so when there's decisions to be made, I'd like to do a plus minus, the positives of the situation, what's the negatives, go over that and try to resolve an issue. When, as a general manager, there was many times you had to either promote one person or maybe redirect another person, as I would call it. And, instead of problems, I look at them as opportunities. Sometimes you want to promote one person, and the other person, instead of promoting them, you kind of redirect them into a different area. But also, another theory from my corporate experience, it's called the beach ball theory. And this is something that I had to learn. So if you imagine a giant beach ball, and each person is standing on the side of the beach ball, and I see yellow, you see red, he sees blue, she sees green, and the person above the beach ball, the corporate president or the person who's in charge of the situation, determines that today the beach ball is green. Now you may not see green, you may see blue, I may see red, but I have to understand that in the whole corporation, from the top down, maybe I don't see everything. And so then I understand that the people that are in charge, that own the company, say the citizens of our township, they're in charge, and if they say this is what we're going to do, if they say these are the new supervisors, then everybody goes along with it. It shouldn't be cause commotion and quitting and all this nonsense. The beach ball is blue. I understand it may not be my decision, but I understand that's the decision, and I just go with it. That's how I approach those situations.
Okay, great. Bill?
I've had instances where, especially with the Limerick plant on the search team, the search team was a new entity that was being developed. It used to be just an assigned post, you'd be there once, maybe every 3 months. But it wasn't effective. So we went to management and we talked to them about making it a permanent 5-member team. So when vehicles that come in every day delivering fuel or whatever, you get to know the drivers and whatnot, so you can tell if there's something off or not about it. Well, it was a battle with corporate and our management because corporate, or the other way around, security to corporate is an unwanted expense. According to corporate, security does nothing, but the government says we've got to be there, so they got to spend their money. So they want to spend as little as possible. So what we would do is, when we got into a group and we wanted to promote something, we would define what our goal is. What is it we're trying to promote? What is it we're trying to accomplish? And then we would have discussions, see who's in agreement, who's not in agreement, where everybody stands. And if we're not in agreement, let's discover the root cause of that disagreement. Is it that you hate everything about it, or is there one individual part that you want to, you know, rehash, eliminate, or expand. So everybody then gets to discuss their own point of view in a non-aggressive, relaxed way, while everybody else is actively listening, giving them the respect to hear what they say. And then after hearing that and collaborating on the issue at hand, we would come up with a plan of action that we can all agree about and move it forward. And usually it came down to, now that corporate knows about it, because we know we're fighting money, you know, corporate doesn't want to give us money for it, but now that they know about what we said on the what ifs, what if we don't do this and something happens? Now the liability is put on corporate. And that was usually a game winner, because corporate, they can turn a blind eye until somebody puts it in paper. Once it's in paper, now they're liable. So they're liable to all use people if something goes wrong with that plan. But there was a lot of discussions like that, but that plan of 4 Ds usually works pretty well.
Okay, great.
Perfect. My favorite question. So Upper Frederick has not raised taxes for a considerable amount of time. How would each one of you address the increased costs of the township that have occurred naturally over the time, or build new projects and programs? And I don't have who's first on this because I got to flip the page. It's Mr. Carrata.
Back the other way.
Yes.
Seat for somebody.
Did
Wow,
you get all that, or?
That's a tough question. That's a dangerous question. But taxes haven't been raised in over 10 years here. I'm not up to date on our current budget, how it's working, but I believe the last meeting that I watched on tape was, yes, I did watch it while I was on vacation. You did mention that we're operating in a deficit right now.
Yes, we have tended to carry a fiscal deficit, a minor structural deficit from year to year here for the majority of the past about 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've reviewed, and this is, like I said, I've been at this since 2021, and I've got stacks of papers at home. I downloaded and printed out everything I could off the old website, because when I was digging into it, stuff just started disappearing. So I have a lot of stuff that you guys might not have. But looking at the budgets, it's this game of robbing Peter to pay Paul. I can balance my budget by taking money from this account, putting it here, and look, it balances. But it doesn't, because eventually Paul's going to want his money back. And if you can't give it to him, then what? We're going to get in a situation like I think we're either already in or getting close to. If you haven't raised taxes in 10 years, especially in this economic climate, with everything increasing the way it has, where are you getting the money from? I couldn't run my household if I didn't have some way of generating more income from 10 years ago to now. The prices don't cost the same. It's common sense. Everything costs more. Oil costs more, fuels cost more, our asphalt costs more, personnel costs more, medical benefit. All that stuff is costing more, but you're not bringing any more income into the township. I don't believe high-density developments is the way to get tax money to come in this township. Because as quick as it comes in, you're going to send it back out to pay for infrastructure, maintenance, development, repairs, our schools, everything. We can't handle any more people. I would like to see, maybe if we're going to do some development, let's put a couple $1 million farmettes around here and get the money from rich people. No, I'm sorry. Instead of, cramming us in tight. But common sense has got to say that eventually it's coming. And I think the only reason taxes hasn't been raised in our township is because the people sitting at that table knew that if I raise your taxes, you're not going to vote for me. So I'm playing politics with your future. Politics don't belong in here. The hard question is, if taxes have to be raised, Dean got the gumption to be honest with the people and say, this is where we stand. If you want to keep us rural, we're going to have to pay for it one way or another. If you don't care if we hand our property's over to development, and hey, maybe we don't have to raise the taxes. But it's something you got to sit down and look at with an open mind and common sense and say, hey, it may be coming. And I would not, if it comes down to, and like I said, I'm not privy to all the financials right now. But if it would come down to that and a vote, I would not vote just so I could get reelected. I would vote with whatever the financials say. And that's a promise I will make everyone.
Steve, would you like me to reread it, buddy?
You can read it, yeah.
Okay, well, I was being serious, it's a
Yes,
long
no,
one. Yeah.
you're
So, Upper Frederick has not raised taxes for a considerable amount of time. How would you address the increase of cost of the township that have occurred naturally over time, or build new projects and programs?
So, I mean, I was looking at the 2023 final budget. And so, are we not, it says that we're very financially secure with a general fund balance of 1.6 plus 123% of what they recommend. I see that, I was looking at our revenues. Are we short every year, a few $100,000, or are we, like, I don't see the shortfall. It looks to me, from just looking at the last budget, that we have plenty of money. We have plenty of money in reserve, more than we're supposed to have. So I don't think we need to raise taxes. I would say that if we fell below what the state recommends, then that would be a cause for concern, and then we would have to look at that. But I certainly don't want to pay more in taxes. And I certainly wouldn't vote for raising taxes for no reason, just because cost of increases. Cost of increases, our income has increased as a township. And it seems like we're in very safe territory for now. So I would put that off until it's necessary to address raising taxes.
Okay. Darby, you want me to reread it for you too, bud? It's all right. Go back real quick for the back. So Upper Frederick Township has not raised taxes for a considerable amount of time. How would you address the increase of costs of the township that have occurred naturally over the time, or build new projects and programs?
Sorry, still collecting my thoughts. I think the back half of that question is probably the most important part. Nobody wants taxes to raise, but we need money. And a good option might be, I'm a little unfamiliar with all of it, but looking into new projects and programs that could give us that financial stability that we, I don't think, I hate to say it, and I don't mean to counter your point, but just because the state recommends something doesn't mean that's the safest option. People's, when you leave a job, they say they have 3 to 6 months of income, but realistically, you're going to want more of that in case of an emergency. We've experienced plenty of emergencies even in the last couple of years. We don't want to be stuck with, we don't want to be stuck. I would personally like to see if there's options besides raising taxes, because I'm sure there's options out there, but whether they're the most realistic is a different question. There are discussions to have, there are discussions the supervisors should be having, but more than anything, it comes down to, I think, what our community is thinking and what our checkbook is saying.
Okay. Buck, do you want me to read it to you too, bud? I don't mind doing it.
I think I got it.
Okay.
There's a plausible deniability here, so if I forget it, that's why I'm wrong.
Yeah, there you go. I knew what you were doing.
Carapa's right. With the developments, it's a snowball effect. You never get caught up. You know, you look at every single one of these municipalities, especially when you start heading east, you know, they start building and it just keeps growing and growing and growing because they never get caught up. So, but it's a tricky question, you know, as the township, if they're running in a deficit, if they're having, they're struggling, well, that also means the property owners, the taxpayers in the township are struggling too. So it's a very touchy subject, but I'd have to look at the numbers. There's, in government across the board, there's wasteful spending. I'm not saying that we're wasting money here in the township, but I'm sure that there's spending that could be cut. I mean, this is practical economics. You know, what do you do in your own household? You know, do you need to have cable? You know, do you need to have I don't know, you know, the newest blender, you know, that sits on your, or you can replace your microwave. You need to get a new car every other year. Does it make sense? Or, you know, these are all questions that everybody struggles with. Sometimes you got to tighten the belt loop. That's what you have to do. But at the same time, you know, in your own household, if you are running out of money, you know, and you're working, well, you got to figure it out. You know, the mortgage companies saying, you know, you're 3 months behind in your mortgage, or again, the township itself is saying, hey, man, you didn't pay your property taxes. We're coming to take your property. You know, everybody's has this headache that they have to deal with, so everybody has to figure it out. So whatever you do in your home is what we should be doing in the township. I'm not saying the township's spending $500,000 on toilet seats like the federal government does. I guarantee we don't. But I'm sure there's waste in the township that could be taken care of. And so that's something where the books would really have to be gone through. You'd have to do a complete audit of what's coming in and what's going out, very detailed, and make a plan. You know, I would say if that was going to happen, you know, it should be discussed, you know, a few years ahead of time and slowly implemented if that's the case. I would hate to see taxes being raised, but you know, if I gotta charge more to a customer for material, you know, because material costs have gone up and gas prices have gone up, then I have to charge the customer more. But at the same time, then I run the risk of not getting the job and not putting food on the table and paying the mortgage myself. So these are very tricky questions, but whatever you would do in your house to sustain your finances is what the township should be doing, and it's pretty basic when you get down to it. So
I agree. Ms. Lacey, you get the easy one.
And yes, it's coming to you, Bob.
What's your favorite
You're getting the hang of this now.
Yeah.
What's your favorite color?
what's that thing where the balls go back and forth? Bangers or something?
Having trust in local leaders is important. What would you do to build trust in Upper Frederick Township's government?
Well, you've led by example already. Again, the previous board, not to pick on anybody, but they criminalized free speech. You know, and because they didn't want to be, you know, I mean, if I come into the township building and there's an issue because maybe the roads crew did something in front of the house, but you don't want us talking about it, that's my time to talk about it. Maybe I can't wait for a month because maybe it's a pressing issue. You know, and they say, well, you got to come in Tuesday afternoon, you know, a week later, you know, when the manager's here. Well, that doesn't necessarily work if it's a pressing issue, so you got to talk to them. If there's funny business going on with the books, yeah, the true bosses, the residents need to know, so they need to be able to bring that up. So really, I brought it up before, success and failure in life is based on mastering the fundamental. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The residents, the stakeholders in this township are the bosses. And again, if they want to do something reasonable, don't give them a hard time. I mean, applaud them if they want to subdivide 2 acres off their 12-acre lot. You know, hey, that's great. You got some good plans going on in the future. It's better than having 20 houses brought in. You know, you just have to respect the taxpayer in the township. They're the bosses. That's all. And when they come in, just smile at them. It's infectious. That's all.
Great. Darby?
I think all 4 of us sitting up here can agree right now that, you know, the residents are the bosses. And to be a good leader, you know, I think you're listening to them. And having grown up here, and I'll stress on, you know, I didn't move here. I grew up here, so I went to Boyertown growing up, and so it was really being adolescent in the area is very different than being an adult. But I think more than anything, being a leader in this type of community is being out in the community. Bill, I'm sorry, I only know you because you came up to our house and were door knocking, asking for support, talking about, you know, what was important to you and what's important in this community. I totally agree. It's about the rural character of our area. And so whether that's finding more ways to get people in here or get out there, I think that's what's important. Just because we now have, you know, everything's recorded and we can show it to the public, doesn't mean the public's listening or watching. Y'all aren't the entire community of our township, you know, that's kind of tough. And our community, our residents aren't just made up of the adults in the area, it's the children. It's educating not only, you know, the people who are here, the people who bother to pay attention, but trying to at least remind people that we're here and that if they have problems, we're here to listen and we're here to help. I think, you know, there's community days, which is great, you know, but that's once a year. There's these weekly meetings, but I mean, let's be honest, they can get kind of dry, you know.
These wonderful meetings?
So, I mean, it's just like, in my opinion, if you're going to be a leader, you got to be a part of your community, and to be a part of your community, you have to be, you know, you have to be talking to everybody and not just listening to when it's convenient at these meetings. Sometimes it's being neighborly. You know, we've had new neighbors across the street from me on the other side of your woods, Bill, now for about 2 months. I haven't spoken to them much, but they seem like a lovely couple. But, you know, I talked to my mom about how she grew up here, and she used to, granted the roads were a little less busy and a little more safe, but she, you know, she would walk through the woods to her neighbors to talk any time of day because there wasn't a phone, you know. And so just being able to, you know, nobody likes to door knock, but going back to that maybe might be important for not only, you know, the residents, but especially for our leaders.
So, yeah, I think that, I think you guys have started to help that situation. I think the more we can have public meetings, the more people that can be in on it on Facebook or whatever, the more open. Everything needs to be as transparent as possible. No secret double handshakes behind the desk or anything. So the more transparent we can be, the better. And I also think, like Mr. Darby said, maybe, you know, when there's a project on a street, or, you know, somebody comes in with a concern, I wouldn't mind as a supervisor going to their house and checking out what they're talking about, and maybe having some personal time, you know,